What's up, Life Group Coaches? Dave Obwald here, and I am getting to share with you a little bit today about conflict. We've shot a video for the Life Group leaders, just kind of really a short overview of some concepts to be thinking about when it comes to conflict. And so I want to equip you real quick to how to walk that through with them. What are some, I want to resource you with some questions so that when you meet with them, you can dive into their lives a little bit. Now, what I'd love you to think about too is it's not just about their life group. You have people that you are husbands that you're going to be meeting with, or wives that you're going to be meeting with, people that are at schools. Conflict in their lives is an inevitable thing, and so hopefully this discussion is going to be a pretty rich one for you because they're going to have stuff to pull from. And so as you meet with them, I would say make sure that they're actually, ask them questions like, hey, tell me about a conflict in your life. How did you view conflict growing up in your home? What is your natural tendencies? And so let me share some of the things I shared with them, and then maybe how then you can dive into that a little more with them in your time together. One of the first concepts I try to drill home with them is this, that we all have a perspective on conflict that we bring in. So I said, hey, get a conflict in your mind. Think of the first couple words that come to your mind when you think of that conflict. So naturally, they're going to think of stuff like pain, strife, discord, anxiety, fear, da-da-da-da-da. Well, every one of the life group leaders that went through this, I guarantee, is going to think of negative things when they think of conflict and a conflict in their lives. Now, what God is trying to do with us is He's trying to shift our mindset to see not only that stuff that can be present in conflict, because it is, but He wants to see us to see it as an opportunity as well. And so I shared 3 concepts with them that would be great to ask them about and how they see that maybe playing out in their lives, and if they've seen that play out in their lives. The first is this, that conflict not only presents all those dangerous things, but it also creates an opportunity, and it creates 3 specific opportunities. One is to glorify God. It says in 1 Corinthians that everything that we do is an opportunity to glorify God. And that's a powerful concept. It means that often the things that point to the glory of God the most are these mundane things that we do, like dealing with conflict with another person, like loving our wives in a specific way, that people look upon that and go, wow, they really believe that God changes things, that He transforms things, that, wow, why would they confess to one another? Maybe because they believe that God is a God of reconciliation and other things like that. So it's an opportunity to glorify God. The second thing is it's an opportunity to serve another person. That, Scripture constantly talks about that Christ came to serve rather than to be served. That when we're called to live as Christians, we're called to live as servants. That we're to walk humbly with one another, all those different things. So it's an opportunity to wash another person's feet in a conflict, which is so hard to do, right? If you think of the example of Christ, well, Christ served people that were mocking Him, that were flogging Him, that were, far from being easy to serve. Well, in a conflict, you get an opportunity to walk in your Master's footsteps with a person who's hard to serve in that moment. And so an opportunity to serve them. And the third thing is it's an opportunity to grow in Christ likeness. God uses hard stuff in our lives more often than He uses good stuff. And so James 1 talks about it, Peter talks about it, that we're to be thankful for trials in our lives because they produce things in us that easy times just don't produce. It makes us trust God in a new way. And so often when someone's in a conflict, you have an opportunity, if they're looking for it, to grow so much. And so you have an opportunity with your life group leader to ask them about different conflicts in their lives. How have you seen those 3 things happening in the middle of your conflict? The second thing that I wanted to get them to kind of see is that there's this idea of perspective on conflict. I'm going to throw up a picture on the screen for you, and it'll be an attachment as well to this talk right now. But it's a picture of a woman, right? And the concept is, and I didn't actually share this with them, so this is a resource that you can just use with them if you want. But the idea is that we're viewing conflict from a specific lens, and we only have our lens on it. Well, there's another person in the conflict too that's probably seeing it from a different perspective. And so perspective is so huge. In Proverbs 21, it says this, every man seems right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs his heart. It's basically like, look, we're prone to sin. We're prone to seeing stuff the way we want to see stuff. And so this picture is a picture of, really, it's 2 pictures. It's an old woman and a young woman. And if you can't see it, you got to look a little harder to see both. But the fact is you can't see both at the same time. And often it takes help to see both sides. It's to see both pictures. And the same is true for conflict. So for us to have a humble sense that I'm going to need the other person in this conflict to help me see from their side of things. And by seeing it from their side doesn't mean I'm necessarily wrong. It just means I'm acknowledging where they're coming from, which is a huge thing. The other thing that I had them recognize about themselves, and which would be really helpful, I'm going to put a graph on the again on the screen right now for you to see, but also as an attachment. It's called the Issues and Commitment to Being Constructive model. Basically, all it's getting at is this. It's saying that we all have a natural tendency in conflict to either be what we would call a peace faker or a peace breaker. God would desire for us to be peacemakers, which is people that are able to balance both the issues, so truth, and also the relationships, so grace. And so to walk with people in truth and in grace. Our tendency is we do one well, but not the other. I tend to be a peace faker. And so if you look at this graph, it means that I'm really big on relationships and I'll keep the peace at all costs. But on a bad day, I'm quote unquote nice. Nice means I'll avoid conflict at all costs. Nice means that I won't bring up issues that really need to be brought up. Nice means that when I bring up an issue, often I'll kind of skirt away from it and go, oh, not a big deal, at any side of tension, because I just want to keep the peace, because I care about what this person thinks about me, maybe sometimes too much. And so some of your life group leaders may have that as an issue, which would be helpful to address, because that plays itself out in a life group, it plays itself out in a home, and it has repercussions, because peace faking isn't true peace, and it isn't really growing in relationships. It's often avoiding things that really need to be dealt with. On the flip side of things, there's peace breakers. Peace breakers are those people that are really good at speaking the truth. They're really good at bringing up the issues, and they're not going to let things slide. But often in the not letting things slide, it's going to be competitive. It's going to be, you're going to hear from my perspective, and I'm going to say it a little bit louder, and I'm going to say it a little bit longer until you really hear what I have to say. And on a bad day, they're not going to really be people that are going to want to bring people in and deal with problems together. They're going to want to win in certain situations. And so for people to identify as a leader who they tend to be on a bad day is really helpful for them. So I would encourage you to have a conversation about that. What is their tendency? How has that played itself out in their life group? How have they seen that play itself out in their homes? And so for that, to recognize that, then you can talk about, well, what does it take for you to not be a peace breaker or a peace faker, but to grow into being a peacemaker, where you do both grace for the individuals and in the relationships, but you're speaking truth in love with one another and bringing up things when they need to be brought up. And so I'll put some resources on there and questions you can ask to help you kind of get that out and talk about that with the individual. And then the last thing is that I challenge them that they have options in dealing with a conflict. And then the main strategy I gave them was this, is that you've got to be able to separate the problem from the person. Often we get really competitive in a conflict and we want to win, or we feel like we have to control the situation to solve it. In a life group setting, or in a home or wherever the situation may occur, for them to see themselves as individuals who are in a conflict and that are sharing the issue, and that they're hard on the issue. Like they're like really going, let's fight this, because what this issue is doing is it's threatening shalom, which is the idea for peace scripturally. It's threatening wholeness. It's threatening unity for us. And so we need to be all about fighting that together. But this line between us is we need to remember we're on the same team. We need to be soft on each other as we're hard on the problem. And if they can remember that, it's going to change a lot of how they enter into a conflict situation in a life group, trying to learn how to bring that person along as a teammate to deal with the issue rather than an adversary who I'm looking to win an argument against. I'm going to put on the screen for you right now, we would call it the 4 options model, but it's just showing that the difference between a number 1, which is competitive, and a number 4, which is saying, hey, let's work on this issue together. And so again, you can use that. I'm also going to put up here this thing on the screen for you, which is, it talks about the social transformation of conflict. It shows what happens when you don't do that in a conflict and what naturally occurs next as you go up. There's less trust, there's less direct communication, there's more talking in little sidebars, we call them triangles, where it's like, oh, I'm not gonna deal with the issue with that person. I know they talk a lot in life group and I should really address that with them. Or I know they have this sin issue, but I'm not gonna talk to them about it, I'm actually gonna talk to another person in life group about it. And so gossip and other things start like that, which lead to all these other things, which ultimately lead to splits and relationships breaking. And the fact of doing life closely together actually starts to move apart. And those are the things we want to guard against at all costs. And so the more you can get back to what Matthew 18 would talk about, which is where we're individuals who are in conflict, yes, but are dealing with the issue together as a team rather than getting adversarial, and doing it at what we would call the lowest level possible all along the way. And so again, I'm going to put questions on here for you to dive into, but have a good conversation with them. Hopefully for you, this has been a chance for you to do some self-reflection as well, because we all need to grow in this area. And so hopefully this is kind of a grow area for you. We have other resources that are on the web, on our website about conflict. I'll kind of link to those as well as I would love to, as well as your other spiritual formation directors and campus pastors, be a resource for you. If you feel like you guys are walking in a conflict that you need more eyes on, very biblical to get help in then learning how to process that with your life group leader as a coach. But you guys are very equipped to walk with them in many ways. And so again, I'm already thankful for the conversations you're going to have, because these are growing conversations. But thanks for all you do as a coach. You really are making more of a difference than you would probably even imagine in the kingdom. And so thanks for being faithful.